You are listening to the Freight Buyers Club, a home for those interested in international trade, shipping, procurement, logistics, and air freight. In fact, all things supply chain in the Americas, Asia, and beyond. This podcast is brought to you by your host, Mike King, and produced in partnership with Demerco Express Group, a global 3PL that specializes in managing logistics to, from, and within the Asia-Pacific region.
Hello everybody, I'm Mike King. This is the Freight Buyers Club and this is part 2 of my interview with the fantastic Bronson Hsieh. Over a 45-year career, he was chairman of not one, but two of the world's biggest shipping lines, Evergreen and Yang Ming. As ever, you can find all episodes of this podcast at thefreightbuyersclub.com, where you can subscribe to receive each new release direct to your inbox. We're also available on all podcast platforms, including Google, Apple, and Spotify, and you can also find us on YouTube. Now, let's get straight to it. Bronson, we want to hear your views on the future of container shipping and what all that means for shippers. But maybe, can you give us 3 conclusions from the COVID years from a shipping line perspective? 3 lessons that maybe they should have learned. And I mean, one I would say was like, obviously pandemics are great for demand, but maybe you've got some different lessons.
Well, you see, I witnessed by myself because the outbreak of the COVID pandemic started by end of 2019, and I retired on the end of 2020. I know all the stories. When you see the shipping carriers, also they were affected by this shortage of the space, shortage of the containers, and because of the several reasons I mentioned quite earlier. If you want me to give a certain kind of conclusion, I think the shipping carriers, they are not the so-called advantage or so-called beneficial because this kind of supply chain disruption not caused by shipping carrier themselves, okay? Not caused because of the relief package and the retaliatory consumption force these supply chain disruptions. And because of that, shipping carrier, in order to meet the customer requirement to offer them enough space, shipping carrier also try their best to place a lot of new order, not only the ship, also the equipment, container. Also, they charter a lot of the new tonnage. Doesn't matter it's so high the charter rate. It doesn't matter how long the owner require. Maybe they require you, if you want to charter vessel at least 3 years, with very high charter rate. Shipping carrier, they didn't have a choice in order to meet or satisfy the customer's requirement. They do whatsoever they can do. Okay. Right now, maybe I heard or I saw that the higher ocean freight costs so many shipper or consignees unhappy. But I would like to emphasize this kind of reason to be unhappy, not caused by shipping carrier alone. That's caused mostly from the supply chain disruptions. Also, shipping carrier try their best to do whatever they can do. Of course, for the coming few years, for instance, right now, the shipper or consignee trying to conclude the service contract for the new term starting from 1st of May, I think both sides need some kind of, the understanding or discovery in order to meet both sides' requirement to sign a service contract. I think there's one good opportunity for this TPM meeting to be had end of this month. So I think most of shipping carrier will attend this meeting together with a lot of shipper consignee also will participate in this event. I think they have a lot of time to communicate each other to try to solve any kind of unhappy what the experience. Another issue, I think most of the shipping carriers who place a lot of new ship to be delivered this year, next year, or after next year, got to be considered or got to be managed properly. For those redundant, if I say the demand not so much, for the coming this year, next year, then you can imagine the supplies this year will reach up to 8.2. Now next year we're 8.8%. That's become an additional burden for the shipping carrier. And those new tonnage, the purpose for them to order is going to replace a lot of charter vessels, which they charter maybe during the past 7 or 10 years. That's the time for them to replace the new tonnage, okay, instead of those charter vessels. Otherwise, if the additional tonnage, I think most carriers, they are going to suffer this kind of a burden. Well, that's the consequence created by these past 2 years.
So we're going to see a lot of that tonnage that was chartered in at high rates passed back and probably laid up or scrapped, and that's going to be replaced by these new vessels.
Yep.
So that makes a lot of sense from the balance sheet. Just going back to your point there about how container lines tried their best to cope with all of those disruptions. When I speak to shippers or forwarders, I think they understand that there's not much the container lines could do about containers being stuck in the Midwest rather than being available in China during that period, or vessel queues off the West Coast and then latterly the East Coast, problems at ports in Europe. I think people will get that. What they normally say to me, though, what was frustrating for them is not honouring contracts, not picking up the phone, rolling of cargo, not knowing where their cargo was. Do you think maybe that container lines could have treated customers better and there's lessons from that?
Well, I think the shipping carrier or shipping company that will not provide a service within only 1 year or 2 years. The vessel they are going to build, as far as the life is concerned, will last at least 25 years. That means to keep a good relationship with any shipper or consignee is a must. You cannot jeopardize the relationship with the customers. So during the past 2 or 3 years, as I mentioned earlier, the shipping carrier tried their best to satisfy with the requirement from the customers, but really a lot of area really out of their control. You see, not the shipping carrier try to avoid providing the better or best service to the shipper or consignee. It's not the purpose. So I want to emphasize, while they are so regret those kind of unhappy things happened during the past 2 or 3 years, but I think the shipping carrier has a sincerity trying to overcome this kind of difficulty during the past 2 years. Okay, right now, seems like the whole chaotic situation almost finished. All the shipping development, my personal point of view, will go back to the normalities. So the good relationship between shipper, consignee, and the shipping carrier, I hope this issue will be finished as possible as both sides.
So a better relationship moving forward.
Yes, of course. You see, nobody can survive without each other. We need a cargo, not we. I'm the shipping carrier, I retired already. The shipping carrier needs the cargo, and ship consignee needed the vessel to make the cargo to be movable. Am I right?
I'll take your word for it. You're the expert. As the expert as well, we talked before about that supply-demand balance. And you're positive that we will see some pickup in demand, and you think container lines will have got ways of managing the supply side of things. As those rates plummet, some analysts have suggested that we might be looking at a rates war. Presumably, you don't think there will be a race to the bottom in that way, like we've seen in other cycles of container shipping in the past.
That maybe happened past some years. There's some shipping carrier, what we saw on the newspaper, they prefer to have a more market share than making money or not. But I think this case has been over. Nowadays, very difficult to find any announcement made by shipping carrier. In order to keep their market share, they are trying to lower down the ocean freight, or even they are going to lose money. Only purpose they are going to keep the market share. I don't think it is quite right. Okay, so I hope in the future everything will go back to normal. The supply demand will decide the shipping carrier to be profitable or not. And foreseeable the futures, the demand wise, maybe this year's, as I mentioned quite earlier, the 1.4% to be increased. I hope will be more by end of this year. So once CPI has been lowered down to a certain level, also over the stock will be digest as soon as possible. For instance, January, the purchase in the power has been increased 3% compared in the last month. So it looks like the American people, especially, they are going to digest more overstock cargo, and maybe they have more money. Also, unemployment ratio in the United States, what I saw the newspaper is the lowest unemployment ratio during the past 15 years. So that's it. You can imagine the people have job with the low CPI gradually. I think they are able to buy more stuff. Next year's the Afghan forecast, the demand, I'm talking about Afghan demand always grow, but not only limit to United States. But next year will be increased to a 2.2%. If Chinese status in terms of export activity back to normal, and the war is going to be stopped between Russia and Ukraine. So I think next year, the 2.2%, the cargo demand probably will increase, while the supply growth ratio, if shipping carrier, they are willing or they are capable to control the space down to a certain level, just like they can defer those new tonnage to be delivered to 2025. I think next year will not be so bad. Probably will be better than this year's. But anyway, I'm not fortune teller. I just trying to provide those kind of data I gather from some media, some newspaper, plus my own experience during the past 40 years to make a search, my own comment.
As you say, yeah, it's very interesting. We've got this economic downturn. Historically, it's been pretty unusual to also have high employment rates, and that, as you see in the US and also in Europe. Let's see how that works out there. If I can just ask you a question about the container shipping alliance system. We've seen the 2M alliance, Maersk and MSC, announce that they'll get divorced in January 2025, although there's some sounds coming from Maersk that they would like that to happen a bit earlier. Do you anticipate any changes in the alliance system apart from that one?
In terms of the global shipping status, I don't think they will change quite a lot. The reason why is, you know how many percent of MSC's tonnage contribute to the 2M alliance? They just contributed 25% of their total capacity. Maersk can only contribute 39% of their total capacity to 2M. In other words, those two big giants still kept their own identity to run their own service. So today, they announced they are going to dissolve this 2M. Basically, doesn't affect them not too much, even to the global shipping industries. That's the number one reason. Number two, the MSCs, their market share 17%, while Maersk has 16%. You know very well, MSC up to now, they still have 230 new vessels on the book to be delivered this year and the next year and after next years. Once those new tonnage to be delivered, probably their market share will be about 20%. That's enough for them to act as independent carriers without accompanying the new tonnage or additional tonnage from any partner in the shipping industries. Maersk Lines, during the past 2 years, while the MSC charter or built a lot of vessels, but Maersk Line was not hurried. He spent a lot of money earned from the market during the past 2 years to acquire a lot of the terminal, airline, trucking, and warehouse. You know very well, they tried to provide a so-called end-to-end service to satisfy these requirements from the customer need end-to-end service. I think that this direction is headed by the Maersk Line. It's quite different from the MSC. Okay, but a lot of people ask MSC or Maersk Line whether they are going to invite several or some the carrier to join it as another one alliance. Well, officially alliance, I don't think so, but depends on necessities. Probably they will join with some regional network service carrier to join with Maersk Line or MSC in order to provide the comprehensive network service to the customers. That's it. In other words, I don't think they will organize another one new alliance. Just depend on the necessity.
This podcast is proudly produced in partnership with Demerco Express Group, a trusted provider of global shipping and contract logistics services in Asia, Europe, and North America. Demerco's particular strength is in Asia, where it gives shippers the freight capacity and local market expertise to streamline freight movements to and from the region, particularly for trans-Pacific lanes. With 130 forwarding and logistics locations across China, India, and Southeast Asia, Demerco connects Asia with the world like no other global 3PL. You are listening to the Freight Buyers Club.
Bronson, what do you think of these different strategies? You mentioned Maersk heading down this integrator path. Some other carriers have said they're going to stick to these port-to-port services. Do you think we'll see anyone else following Maersk, perhaps?
Yes. As a matter of fact, Evergreen Group has done this for more than 10 or 20 years already. Back in 1989, what the Evergreen, at that time, we were acting like independent carriers, not a member of any alliance. Besides that, also we inaugurate the airline service starting from 1989. And later also we have our own steel factories. Also we have our own terminal facility globally in order to provide the so-called freight forwarder service to provide the so-called one-stop service. But my point of view, basically, I quite appreciate, or I think this kind of strategy implemented by Maersk is quite right directions. Not only a shipping carrier provide the port-to-port service, if any shipping group at the same time also their own freight forwarder department or own freight forwarder company who can provide a one-stop service. The stop service is value-added service. That's quite profitable. If you compare the shipping carrier alone, just providing so-called port-to-port service, you've got to head-to-head to fight with your competitors. Not so much flexibility or not so many diversity. Once the market is not good shape, you will feel very difficult in terms of your finance status. But if you have some kind of a diversified business, probably they can help you when the shipping base is not good, then the airline service to carry the cargo can give you some kind of the help in terms of a financial result. So I think another carrier like CMA, also they have a similar strategy like Maersk Line. And Evergreen had done this quite a long time. So sometimes that's I experienced by myself. Sometimes when the marine side is not a good shape, but the airline side can help in the particular year with more profit to offset the loss coming from marine side or vice versa. I think the strategy done by the Maersk Line is quite smart or quite right directions. But I don't mean MSC is doing right or not right. But because they think that they have a good capacity, they can manipulate the size of the MSCs. They have their own way. But also, I realize MSC also provides some kind of a logistics service by themselves. But in terms of capacity, I think the Maersk Line is more aggressive than the other carriers.
Interesting. Well, we'll watch how that plays out. One of the common challenges that all these shipping lines will face with is on the environment and meeting stringent emissions targets over the next few decades. Do you think that container lines are moving quickly enough towards those goals? Or maybe put it another way, do you think they're moving quickly enough to meet the sustainability demands of their customers?
Okay, most of the shipping, all of the shipping carriers definitely they will head this direction required by IMO. by 2040 or 2050 in order to reach zero carbon emission. Not only all the shipping carriers try to fulfill their requirement in order to keep the earth cleaner. Also, they have to satisfy with a lot of customers who ask, as long as you, as a shipping carrier, would like to ship my cargo, you had to reach the requirement asked by the IMO. Right now, there's some kind of organization has been established probably almost 1 year ago. So let me give you an example. Based on the existing fleet, shipping carrier all operate. They are 30% of the, in terms of the TEU or not a amount of volume of vessels, almost 30% of the vessel has retrofit the so-called scrub. Okay, and 2% of the existing vessels adopt the so-called LNG as energy. Okay, that's existing. Those you just mentioned earlier about 742 new vessels, equivalent 7.5 million TEUs. They are about 40% of the new order. They are going to install the scrubber, okay, in order to cope with the requirement from IMO. And also, there are 30% of the new order from those 7.5 million TEUs. You are going to use LNG. 10% of the new order, they are going to adopt the so-called methanol, led by the Maersk Line and the CMA. Those are shipping carriers. So I think, no doubt at all the shipping carriers will head this direction to protect the earth as clean as possible.
Do you think, Bronson, that LNG and scrubbers is the final solution to reach those IMO targets, or do we need to see a greener fuel emerge as a cleaner fuel, a zero emissions fuel, ammonia, hydrogen? Do you think we'll have convergence on one particular fuel at some point in the future?
Well, you see, I think your indication quite right, because the LNG still it can reduce 20% of the carbon to be emission, not 100%. But nowadays, even methanol, same problem, maybe not the final solution to reach zero carbon emission by end of 2050. But you have to consider the period between right now to 2050s. And all the shipping carriers try to compromise. Because also, although the shipping carrier try to use more dual energy, like LNG or methanol, but also the shipping carrier have to consider the supply. Okay, now the LNG and methanol may be the two major energy to be supplied, maybe somewhere there. But the other 100%, non-carbon emission energy might not be easy to be located and where. And also the amount or the quantity can meet the requirement or not by all the shipping carriers by 2050. That's a big issue. But anyway, all the shipping carriers, they try to open their eyes to watch the development.
Thank you, Bronson. And just finally, I just want to turn to digitalisation, if I might. Earlier in February, we heard that the Digital Container Shipping Association announced its commitment to 100% adoption of DCSA digital standards-based electronic bill of lading by 2030. And some of the carriers have announced that they're pushing on with this as fast as possible. Now, switching away from the transfer of physical paper bills, according to DCSA, will save something like 6.5 billion in direct costs for stakeholders and enable 30 to 40 billion in annual global trade growth, which all sounds absolutely fantastic, but makes me think, why didn't this happen before?
Well, that's a good question, because take an example, Yang Ming, also one of the member under the DCSA, 2019, a lot of time I still was the chairman. I approved. Now we shall become one of the founder. Well, I'm very happy to hear recently they are already announced they are going to complete by 2030. Because of that, the shipping society will implement this policy of so-called bill of lading would be beneficial for quite a lot, among you just mentioned. But why it cannot be expedited as soon as possible? Because there are several reasons. The first reason is the e-bill of lading considered as a marketable securities. That's not the traditional bill of lading. That's now of course the traditional bill also is a marketable security, but without paper, so considers quite a valuable marketable security. So need some time to deal with this project. The second reason is this kind of bill of lading had to go through the bank to bank. The bank from home loading size and also the bank on the top discharging size. Whether their contribution or their cooperation, okay. And the same reason is also we need the government who join this bill of lading legalized approval. We need their government's approval who join in this kind of issue of bill of ladings. So that needs some time. That's the reason you saw the article published by DCSA. Hopefully will be completed by 2030.
And is there anything else? Maybe digitalisation, but maybe technology more general. Is there any big improvement out there from that side of things for container shipping, do you think? And I promise you've been very generous with your time today. This is my final question.
Okay, the future, as long as any kind of new technology, as long as it's beneficial for not only for shipping carrier, also for the custom industries or for any society, I think a shipping carrier will be very happy to develop. Well, I think the most high issue is ESG. I think that's a very high issue. So shipping company will head this direction. Also, another IA. The IA also is another one issue the shipping carrier tried to develop aggressively. Another one issue probably you don't know. Another shipping carrier tried to implement so-called VR, the virtual realities. By using this kind of tool, which we can use this from these low orbit satellites, Earth's low orbit satellites. If we have a successful the VR, we can not the only telephone to try to find out any problem happen in the vessel on the sea. For instance, that if there's some cruise ship, before you just ask the doctor to talk with the crews on the vessel. In the future, you can use VR to try to find what kind of problem caused the sink to these crews. Also, we can discover those kind of even engine problem. Okay, not only we use before the telephone, also we can use VR to have the more clear or detailed investigation about why the vessel's engine has something wrong. So those kind of technology is going to developing nowadays. Hope we can successfully implement those kind of a new technology.
So smart shipping will benefit the predictive maintenance operations, but also crew welfare.
Oh, yes.
Excellent. Well, let's hope all that moves forward very, very quickly. Bronson Hsieh, thanks very, very much for joining me on the Freight Buyers Club. It's been a pleasure.
Wow, also my pleasure to join with you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Freight Buyers Club, produced in partnership with the Demerco Express Group. Please subscribe and follow on your platform of choice or sign up for delivery to your inbox at thefreightbuyersclub.com. This podcast wouldn't have been possible without the fantastic editing of Karen Ball and Tom Matthews. And finally, thank you all for listening. The next episode will be with you soon.